Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, your favorite Giants podcast. I'm your host, the Football Grump. With me, as always, is Mike, the Cranky Fan. The Giants come out on top on Sunday, 29-20 over the Seattle Seahawks, visiting on the road. I was watching from my local bar, several beers deep, because I got there at 12 to start the second half of the London game, and I didn't stop until about the end of the Giants game and / the Mets game. Cranky, where were you for this game?
Well, you can tell my voice is a little shot. So that means I had a rare 2-0 weekend on my trek to having 10 combined wins. Gators win Saturday night. Jumped on a flight, got back to New York, headed over to the Talking Giants watch party. So thanks to Bobby and Justin for hosting and having a really good time. It was great to watch with a bunch of people. Having that and the Met game on, was a lot of fun energy there. But it was a great time, and especially kind of a shocking turn of events at the end. And I think there is a video of all of our reactions as that happened. I think either Justin or the Talking Giants site has that. You could go take a look on Twitter and you'll find that. But that's really the shock and the excitement is how we felt like we just won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And that's what's great about football. I mean, it's a random October when your team is not that good, but something like that can make you really, really happy.
I got a little bit of FOMO. I did see the video of you guys running around. There were two videos. I saw one of you running around like an animal, and then I think I saw another one, I think maybe just after a touchdown or something, and Justin was running around through the bar with the camera, I think.
He's amazing because, my first reaction when we score something is to like put my hands in the air, give the guy next to me a high five or whatever. He just grabs his phone and then just starts running around and just catching everything. It's like, that's the last thing I'm thinking of. So the guy he's a great, very smart Giant, knowledgeable person. He's a great Giant fan, and he's a pretty damn good producer too.
Yeah. Those watch parties are a ton of fun. I went to both of those for the 2022 playoffs.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it counts as a watch party, but we sat and watched the Raiders game with them last year. But just in general, those are they host really good fun events. So
sure,
that's awesome. Yeah. I got a little bit of FOMO.
Yeah.
This game, 29-20. I think we'll go through this piece by piece here, but I think my favorite part about this is when I went through, I kind of highlighted like I was like, they can win. Like, this is not a great Seahawks team. I said like, oh, they just barely kind of hung on against like the Broncos and, whatever. And I was just like, but I can't see them doing this, and I can't see them doing that, and I certainly can't see them doing this. And they went ahead and they did every single one of the things that I said I just couldn't see them doing. I'm feeling, I'm just going to give some overall feelings on this team right here, and we'll go into the offense first. But
go ahead. Yeah.
This was a game that I would say, barring one major crucial 7-point swing or 14-point swing play, the New York Giants absolutely dominated in all three phases of the game. And I was thinking a little bit about this team, and I was thinking about people's perceived strength of schedule and where they thought the bubble was, and maybe they were wrong. And then I was kind of looking around at the parity in the NFL and just how clear cut it is, and how few, like, Washington is 4-1. They're one of like three teams, maybe, like one team's 4-1 and another team's 5-0. You know what I mean? Like, it is such a tight race maybe this year. And then I just thought about, like, what I wanted from this team. What everybody asked me in the summer, like, what are you expecting? What's the leap? And I wanted them to just look like an NFL team. And then I figured, like, the next step would come. And I specifically pointed out the offense. And, we'll transition this to the offense. This team is starting to look like that team where I'm going to not care as much about how many wins and losses there are at the end of the year, but I'm seeing the change that I wanted to see. This is an offense that moved the ball down the field. I think 257 yards on the air, over 130 yards on the ground, almost 200 yards on the ground, I think.
Yeah, I think what I want to take that a little step further than what you just said is they're starting to become a team that has an identity on offense. And I think, first and foremost, my first star of the game once again goes to Brian Dable and the rest of the offensive coaching staff because, like I said last week, they are identifying this is what our quarterback is. Like it or not, I don't. They don't care about what the story is going to be next year. They're not thinking about draft picks. They're not thinking about his contract. What do I have in 2024? I have a quarterback who, trending over the last couple of years, makes fewer and fewer mistakes, who is pretty accurate with a short and slightly medium pass, doesn't have an arm anymore or the accuracy to go deep, and they have tailored an offense that works to the strengths of what they're dealing with now. And then my second star goes along to the offensive line because if this offensive line can't pass block and what they're doing, even run blocking, none of this matters. So the the offensive scheme, the offensive design, the offensive play calling is a star. The execution up front to allow these things to happen is a star. And I think now we're seeing an identity of what this team wants to be with this team. Now, who knows what the personnel will look like next year and going forward? It might be different, but I have so much confidence in Brian Dable that he will adapt to, what the future may be because I've seen how he's adapted to this point right now.
Yeah, those are really good points. I'll double down on the offensive line thing. I mean, certainly hopeful for the future with Brian Dable and what he's able to do. 2022 takes a team with no expectations to the playoffs. 2023, he manages to keep the team together despite everything falling apart right away from the first snap. 2024, it looks like he makes a bunch of adjustments to his program based on his failures in 2023, and he's continuing to coach at a high level with the limitations that he's still got. So, Brian Dable is showing me everything I think I need to see from a head coach. I obviously don't agree with every single thing that he does, but I can live with that because people probably shouldn't agree with me every single time anyway. They would be wrong a lot. The offensive line, this might have been their best performance so far, and they've been trending up ever since the beginning of the season. It's not perfect, but as a unit, they are working very, very well together. And I think, massive running lanes. They had 175 yards on the ground, which is, when was the last time you remember us having a running game anything remotely like that? I mean, that didn't involve like a 95-yarder from Saquon or something like that.
And forget the numbers, just how it was done. It was an offensive line that was getting push. It was an offensive line creating holes. It was an offensive line that was allowing guys to bounce outside and do what they wanted to. I mean, we clearly did what we wanted to do. And it started with the first drive. I mean, the highlight and the memory 17 years from now is going to be fumbling on the one and going to get run back. But that drive was, and it's funny, the drive was so long, I forgot that Seattle had the ball first because I texted over to Justin. I was like, has a team ever gone an entire quarter with the ball? And he's like, Seattle started this. I'm like, oh yeah, I completely forgot. But the way they dominated it.
Yeah, I mean that's the impressive part. I mean, I'm gonna. So yeah, huge running lanes. That's what you said. Like, not this wasn't like Saquon Barkley breaking two really big ones. That was all on him. Like, great running the ball, Tyrone Tracy, but nevertheless, huge running lanes, very clean pockets, allowing Daniel Jones to manipulate and move around and go to his second and third reads on some progressions. No penalties that I can recall. I don't think there's any false starts, delay games, nothing on the offensive line. So huge game from them.
No.
I'm gonna fling a star at Daniel Jones and
okay.
Hear me out.
Go for
it. I mean, expecting Daniel Jones to be anything more than he is sort of silly. So what he needs to do. I think this game, he went 23 of 34, 257 yards in the air, 2 touchdowns, ran 11 times for 38 yards, took on some big hits doing it as well. He played a perfectly effective game, very functional game. Most importantly is that he was able to do that without a starting running back and without Malik Nabers. This was a game in which if they were going to have a chance, you can say the O-line's going to have to protect for him. That goes without saying. It's clear that Daniel Jones is not a quarterback that is going to put the other 10 guys on offense on his shoulders and win a game. It's not who he is. So, whatever, that's fine. But nevertheless, if the Giants were going to win this game, he was going to have to step up and play a very good game. And he stepped up and played a very good game with, Darius Slayton again as his number one wide receiver, a rookie tight end, rookie running back for most of this. Eric Gray benched after the first drive, I'm pretty sure. He did everything he needed to do, so I can't not give him a star. I don't need him to be Patrick Mahomes to get a star. I need him to do his job perfectly.
Exactly. And we are pro football fans of live football. We are not fantasy football people who only care about the stats that a player gets.
As Giants fans, I'm win first,
then
stats later.
Right, of course. And he may just be a game manager. And again, I said last week that maybe he will still have a career in this league as a very capable backup somewhere. But I get it. If I don't care about the numbers, because if you break down the numbers, I have here 29 of his 34 pass attempts were less than 10 yards downfield. 8 were behind the line of scrimmage, but that's fine. When you have guys like Wan'Dale Robinson, you have guys like Malik Nabers, you can kind of get away with that and let those guys be your playmakers and make something out of nothing. I think those little things also, they loosen up the defensive line just a little bit to be kind of looking for that. So it may make it a little easier to run too. So that's part of this part of this little scheme that we're developing here.
I'm also going to throw something in here though. You keep mentioning the deep ball, but this is the game where the deep ball actually existed.
Yeah.
We had two throws of over 40 yards to Darius.
We had two. That's true.
One for over a touchdown, one for a touchdown, and one just down the line.
Right, and to be fair, and
he hit it. But the point is that he hasn't been hitting them or even getting close. And in this one, he was 2 for 2, I think.
And credit to Dable and to Jones that they have not just completely abandoned it and say we're never trying again.
Right.
And that does make it a little head scratching. That Jalen Hyatt had no targets. He had 48 snaps. He had 36 routes he ran and didn't get one target. If we are still trying downfield, and there was some effectiveness downfield, and Daniel Jones was having a good day, it would have been nice to try to get him, but that's not my point. Daniel Jones was really good today, and it made me think about something, Grump. I'm trying to become a big thinker now. Thinking how good he looked today, and I was thinking at the bar about the playoff game in Minnesota, how good he looked in that game. I even thought about the game we were in Tampa, that first game he started way back when. And, we try to talk about Daniel Jones with his splits between before and after the neck injury, for example. The interesting thing to look about with Daniel Jones is his splits at home versus away. And I don't think really anybody's really kind of thought about this or talked about it much, but he has played 32 home games in his career. He's played 33 away games in his career, including the playoffs. He's 12-19 at home, 12-21 on the road. Records are about the same. Here's something interesting, though. At home, he's thrown 27 touchdowns and has thrown 29 picks. On the road, he has now thrown 41 touchdowns and only thrown 14 picks. And you say, well, that number of attempts and completions, he only has 5 more attempts on the road, and he's thrown for 2 less yards on the road. So it's interesting that, and we're not talking a small sample size. We're talking, 5+ years now. Is Daniel Jones someone that has fallen to something that's happened to several athletes who play in New York where, is it mental a little bit between the ears that playing at home is when he's not as good and sometimes it's downright awful, and, less pressure on the road makes him better? I don't know, but there is definitely a difference in his effectiveness and, the less mistakes made on the road than at home. Any thoughts about that? Or something to keep monitoring as we keep going?
I mean, I have a lot of thought. I mean, it's hard for me. I think on its face value, I think that Daniel Jones has right from the get go gotten an unfair shake from New York fans. I certainly was not looking forward to drafting him, and I
Mhm.
had done quite a bit of homework on him. But I mean, the reaction from the moment he held up the jersey was negative.
Mhm.
It goes to Yankee Stadium to throw out a first pitch, and it's negative there.
He's
Um,
also replacing Eli. He's replacing,
yeah,
you know,
he's
and
replacing Eli.
an entire generations. That's their guy.
It's true. Um, but I'm interested to actually look at things because he's had such a weird career here
Mhm.
that where he's been on only bad teams and he's been through several regime changes. So I would be interested. I almost feel like this falls down the realm of being like a college thesis where like the thesis statement is Daniel Jones is more comfortable playing on the road than at home. And then in order to really go through that, I think you actually have to dissect almost every single game and look at the circumstances surrounding it. Because you might have coaches coaching to save their jobs at one point. You have a handful of games in which Daniel Jones is probably playing concussed from
Yeah,
a hit he took
I'm definitely gonna do
somewhere in
some
the
more.
game. You know what
I'm
I
definitely
mean?
gonna do more research on this, and next week I'll have some more,
Oh, I mean, I'm not putting it
deeper
on
thoughts.
you.
But no, I'm interested. I'm very interested in this because I get your points, but we're also talking about a sample size of 30 and 30. It's not four
Sure,
games
it's
and
it's
five.
not small, but what I'm saying is that throughout his career, he's always got something weird going on. Where you might have a coach coaching to save his job at one point, and that might throw off how you game plan a game or something like that. And then in some situations, you have a whole different offensive coordinator come in, and if that happened, and I don't remember, but you have 3 home games in a row or whatever to start a season, so all your worst games. It's just so circumstantial with him because there's been nothing consistent about his time here. So my thing is to take data points from his entire time here. Since nothing was consistent, there's just so many variables. I think that there's probably a ton of weight to your thesis. I think it's certainly possible, but I think it's way more difficult than just gathering the early data that you've gathered that shows it. I think that there's probably something there. It's just such a weird set of circumstances that it's, you know what I mean? Like if you were to do that for Eli, it's so easy because he had the same offensive coordinator, the same head coach for a huge chunk of his career. He said
Yeah,
he even had the same GM, but like it just, and he had up and down teams, but
but that's a wide swing. That touchdown interception thing is a wide
it is
swing.
a pretty wide swing. It's pretty
Yeah, and
incredible.
that's why. And if it was something like, he's 27 and 29, but he's also as opposed to 31 and 26, I'd be like, but that's big. And again, I don't know if this, I'm thinking part of this is mental. And, part of it also could be, you're throwing on like every point you just said in the beginning, like nobody wanted him when he got here. He's constantly having to prove himself to be the next Eli. He's had to come back from injury. Had zero offensive line. But a lot of those variables happen over a course of a year, and it happens on home games and away games too. I mean,
Yeah.
there is precedent in New York for this type of thing happening. I mean, people my age remember a pitcher named Ed Whitson, who's a free agent the Yankees signed in early 80s. He was like a fringy all-star, but he could not pitch in New York to the point where he only pitched on the road. Yankee fans would boo him. He had this mental block about him, and he only pitched on the road. Now, this is not. I'm not equating the two. Like, whoa, the Giants should only start Daniel Jones when they're at Dallas, and that's not at all what I'm saying. But New York is not an easy place to play, and when you have everything going against you, there might be something to that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Mhm.
Um, I wanna talk about the receivers that stepped up in this game.
Sure.
Um, Darius Slayton came up huge in this game. I thought that he would be worked into this game heavily, but I thought that they would, I don't know. I guess I expected like Isaiah Hodgins, more Jalen Hyatt. I thought they would spread the ball around more.
Well,
I didn't expect 11 targets. Did you?
absolutely, absolutely
Okay.
agree. Yeah.
Okay. 122 yards on that with a long of 41 and a touchdown. I'm going to talk about the celebration penalty because I think I might. I don't know. I see a lot of people thinking it's ridiculous and freaking out over it or not understanding it. And my thought process is that it's a bad call, but it was because I guess like everyone's questioning like if why can't he just like throw like arrows, you know what I mean? And he was walking past like an official or whatever, lifted his arms up over him, and it created like a gun firing motion,
Yeah.
and that's really all it was.
So in college, I don't remember what game it was. Somebody did it, and they actually called it as like representing a firearm or something related
Violent
kind of call.
motion or something like
Yeah,
that.
something like interpreting a firearm or so. I mean, it's obviously a point of emphasis that, no matter how you stand on the gun issue, that is something they don't want as part of their image. And
Yeah, and
that's fair, but something.
it's also not what he did, but
Oh,
I don't
those
know.
are interpretation things, and something. If it wasn't, it was close enough that somebody thought it was.
Yeah, no, it's
I know
fair.
my stance on celebrations. 99.9% of them are pre-planned. Look at me. I think, we had a league for 80 years where you spiked it and everybody loved it and you moved on. And now it's just theater.
Yeah.
So I wish, even like guys hit home runs now and you think they just won the World Series, and even though they're down 12-0 or something. So I'm old school. I get it. I'm old man yelling at the clouds, but you know, I don't know. I understand the league for that, and you know,
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I'm not complaining.
yeah,
I think there was some genuine confusion from some people who were like, I don't understand. Here's 50 other examples of people pointing. I think that was
yeah,
really the thing.
sure. And I mean, is it a point of emphasis? I mean, my problem would be if they are not, uh, if they haven't said this specifically to the players, either during like in the training camp when they have, they always have like a little class about this is how the rules are changing this year. This is point of emphasis, or what we're calling things. If they weren't aware of that and they called it, that's one thing. But
Well,
if
it's
he's
also
a
we're week 5 at this point, so.
yeah, I mean, if you're aware, of it, you did it, if you're coming close to it, that's a little silly.
Wan'Dale Robinson again came up big in this game. He did have a drop on third down, but went 6 of 9 for 36 yards, a touchdown. Um, just what a reliable chain. It's weird. We're probably going to talk about drops here for a little while, but I am going to call him a reliable chain mover. He really has been the guy on third down getting to the sticks.
Yeah, I mean, his job is to get the ball in space and make a move and get that extra couple of yards, get the first down. You're talking about drops. I'm sure you're going to mention that we lead the league in drops.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a problem. That is a problem for a team that you know has problems overall moving the ball and getting chunk yardage and things. So you know that has to be corrected. It's plain and simple.
I thought it was interesting. This was kind of like a Theo Johnson breakout game in without being too flashy. 5 targets, 5 catches, 48 yards. At one point, he had a 22-yarder. They were kind of forcing it to happen, so you knew it was coming eventually. But getting 5 catches on 5 targets, you can't ask for more.
If you got two reliable receivers, you got to get something from somewhere.
Yeah.
And you can throw out of the backfield if you want, but something. Use the tight end if you got him, and he's a draft pick. They have a lot of hopes for him and everything. Get him involved, and especially when you're not going to have someone who's going to be the biggest target percentage of anybody in the league not playing. It has to be distributed somewhere. So
If we are leading the league in drops, we can't be too far behind on stupid idiot running back fumbles. I'm not ready to move on from the offense until we talk about Eric Gray getting a fart from me. Nice work on some wide open screens early on,
mhm.
but I mean the fumble is inexcusable. It just feels like there's a 50-50 chance if he's touching the ball that it's getting coughed up. It is an absurdly high number of times per touch that he fumbles. And then on top of that, he's not even a particularly productive runner. Like, it's not that he has no running back skills. I'm not going to say that. But he doesn't do something so well that he looks like he deserves a spot over Tyrone Tracy. I would even say over Dante Miller. He looks like the most replaceable piece of this offense right now.
He's a third string running back who won't be back next year. He's been he was a low investment draft pick that for 2 years has had a chance to probably get more of a chance to prove himself than, who's the guy we had from Arizona State we drafted a couple years back?
Gary Brightwell.
Yeah, I mean, he's had more of a chance than Gary Brightwell has to do it on the field, and I think he's been pretty much an abject failure. So, I don't think he'll be back next year at all. And I think when what's his name gets back, we're not even going to see much of him, going forward the rest of the season, barring injuries.
That fumble play, when you really look at this final score, I'm willing to wash out the field goal return for a touchdown, and in place for this touchdown, and then grant myself an extra point because it would have been scored in the first half. You take 7 points away from the Seahawks, and you're really looking at a game that the Giants truly dominated all three phases and would have won something like 30-13. Did you imagine that?
Sure. Because, if you're looking at things like Geno Smith looked very pissed on the sidelines. Like, you could tell he was flustered. And if they were down more, he might have been making more mistakes because he was flustered. Let's talk about that fumble for a second. Can I give a fart to CBS? First of all, I don't even know why a game with two NFC teams is on CBS to begin with, but how is it evenly possible that potentially the biggest play in the game is not replayed until 5 minutes later and shown once and at not a very good angle? Come on, be better, CBS. That's a play we should be seeing multiple times to make a call. It was just kind of like, oh, play stands, but like, how do we know? So they get a fart.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I actually forgot how pissed I was that, like, in the moment watching at the bar, I'm kind of like watching one guy run and like two people chase him. And this happens routinely once a game, right? Where like you're like 50% hoping that it's being called back and this guy's just doing his due diligence. And then like 50% of you is like your heart is in the floor. Like, because fuck.
Everyone's screaming at a bar, no, 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 no. And I think that at the same moment, there was something going on in the Met game too. It was all chaos. You can't hear the announcer saying, flag down or it's being ruled a touchdown. Guys run. And it looked weird as they were running. Like, are they still running at full speed or is he slowing down? Or no, it's a touchdown the other way.
And nothing, you go to break, you just accept it, and then you come back and you get like one shot where you didn't see anything happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty shoddy work from, a ton of money goes into these TV broadcasts, and that was a pretty big failure right there.
Absolutely. I just don't understand why they don't have one stationary camera on each end zone that never moves. I know you have if you're trying to get a camera to be along the line of scrimmage to see something, or a first down to see one thing, but the goal line is the goal line. Just put two fucking cameras down there, automatic cameras, straight across.
I think bodies just get in the way when you do that.
But I mean, it's still better than not having the angle at all. It should always be there. Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
Flip over to defense.
Flip to the defense.
I thought that this was an incredible game. I didn't think. So the three things I thought the Giants couldn't do in this game that they were going to need to do was be physical on the outside. If you remember, I said they have to be physical on the outside to beat up those wide receivers. They have to get a pass rush, which we have not seen them do yet. And I also said that the Giants were going to have to produce some offense without Malik Nabers and Devin Singletary, which I was not willing to believe was going to happen until I saw it. They did all three. I want to start with the outside. Deonte Banks on DK Metcalf was no contest. I mean, I think he had 3 catches in coverage, and on one of them he forced a fumble. Like, he is the one who ripped it out. I thought
I gave him a star.
Yeah, I thought Cordell Flott had a nice physical game as well. Nobody was perfect, but these are three really good wide receivers with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and Jackson Smith and Jigba, and they held their own.
Mhm.
You gave Deontay Banks a star.
I gave him a star. He's getting criticism that he may or may not honestly deserve, but you know, this was a game that he stepped up, and will he ever be a cornerback one? Will he ever be a Pro Bowler? I don't know, to be seen, but you want to see growth and improvement throughout a season, and that was a step up. So you know that to me is star worthy. I mean, I have different levels of why I give stars. For Deontay Banks, that's a star.
The defensive front, holy shit. I I gave the entire defense a star because I thought it was a nice collective effort, because I really thought that they couldn't just do one thing. If the defensive front was going to get pressure, the back end was going to have to be nice and physical and tight and take away the quick game from Geno Smith. And if they didn't get a pass rush, the defensive backfield is going to have to cover three very good wide receivers. So I threw that star to absolutely everybody. In terms of the defensive front, though, 7 sacks.
Yeah.
I thought Shane Bowen was bringing more pressure than I had expected, and what that really seemed to allow to do was force Dexter Lawrence to get more one-on-ones. I think this is sort of the recipe. I know Bowen doesn't like to blitz all that much. I know it's not really in him, but they are going to allow 300 yards of offense passing every single game if they allow Dexter Lawrence to be triple covered every single snap, like the Dallas Cowboys did.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's absolutely crucial that Dexter Lawrence gets at least some one-on-ones. And, this is the pressure list here. Brian Burns, 6 pressures and 1 sack. Dexter Lawrence, 5 pressures and 3 sacks. Kayvon Thibodeau, 5 pressures and 0.5 sacks. DJ Davidson, 2 pressures and 2 sacks. Chapman, 2 pressures. Ojolari, Phillips, Nubin all had 1 pressure, and Nacho had 1 pressure and half a sack.
I had a star for Davidson too. Upon reviewing the tape and stuff, that it just felt like he was just Dexter Lawrence. You expect to be there, but it just seemed like he was all over the place and constantly calling his name and stuff. So that was I gave him a star. We need a second guy to be consistent on that defensive line and inside, and he was that in this game. So I gave him a star.
I think that the Giants really seemed to outcoach the Seahawks in this game. Like, maybe not outcoach. It seemed like they were better prepared, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And again, that's why I've been on the Dable bandwagon the last couple of weeks, is that he's putting them in the best position to win. And and they were more prepared to what they were going to be facing clearly than what Seattle was. So that is a clear win for Dable and the whole coaching staff.
I don't think I had any other farts to give out besides Eric Gray. So I had nothing on the defense. I thought the defense played pretty exquisitely. There were some pretty bad breakdowns. I mean, a lot of this seemed like second half Geno Smith scrambling is what like saved a lot of drives. And on one play, his dumbass slid like 2 yards short of the first down, which forced the 4th down, which I think is the one where Brian Burns sacked him. They tried some silly shit, and they just left Brian Burns to go unblocked. But I think a lot of the second half production from Seattle really came from that. Like, just some unlucky man coverage that Geno identified, escaped the pocket, and just took it. There was one where he ran for like maybe 40 yards. But it really didn't feel like at any point Seattle was really able to push the ball.
No, not at all. Let's talk about special teams.
Okay.
Another one, obviously, the block was pretty amazing and everything, but to me, the decision just to take the knee on the extra point was pretty genius.
Yeah.
And that to me gets another star for Dable.
Okay.
I mean, if you doing the math, I know the odds were pretty remote that a kick would be blocked and returned for a touchdown, even though it actually happened about 15 minutes later in the exact same situation. But you are trying to put your team in the best position to win, and the odds are, you know, it's harder for them to. They would have the one score if they somehow got the 2 points back. So just taking the knee, it's just a safety. It's like the first time you ever see a quarterback dropping back and taking the safety. Like if it's a
Mhm.
a 6 point game to make it a 4 point game, it's like oh yeah, the math works out. And I'm sure nobody thought that was
Yeah, I don't
have you
think
ever
anyone. Yeah, no, I
you ever
never
even
seen.
seen that before? Like, just
No.
I'm electing not even to go for two and risk a fumble. We'll just take the knee. We're good.
Well, I'll say this. I think it's genius in the scenario in which there's less than a minute left. Fine. But I,
Yeah.
I think if you start getting cute and you're doing that with like 2.5 minutes
No, no,
left,
no, no.
and
Absolutely would not do
then
it.
then you look like a fucking idiot when they score a touchdown and get the onside kick and then kick a field goal and beat
Yeah,
your ass.
absolutely not. Then this was a situation of that's playing the clock,
I think it's
playing.
playing the clock, but I think it's also playing the game. At no point was
Mm,
Seattle. They were when they scored their last touchdown. They forced them to move down the field. It was
yeah,
they didn't get anything easy on that drive.
right. But we all know when there's like a minute left in the game that all of a sudden defenses loosen up a little bit and it's a different game. So
Right.
I
But I mean,
make it as hard for them. Yeah, let them.
it's knowing that Seattle wasn't really going to score 2 times in the next
Right.
50 seconds.
Or
Is
even,
really
yeah, and now it's a lot more difficult now to get onside kicks or unnaturally get the ball twice. So
right.
it was just really, really smart. And you know, that's what we want from our coaches. We want our coach. This team is not good enough to just physically be better than teams every week. We need that extra 1% from our coaching staff, and that's one of the things that helps us get there yesterday.
And I couldn't find anything. I didn't notice anything watching the game. Did they leave this game completely unscathed? No injuries, right?
I don't recall anybody getting hurt.
I don't recall anyone getting hurt. So
No.
there's that as well. So hopefully the Giants will be
I
playing a Sunday night game against the Bengals fully staffed with Malik Nabers and Devin Singletary, and we'll see a continuation of this offensive production and
Yeah, for the history of this team over the last X amount of years where we're just continuously banged up. And right now, as of this moment, we don't have our best wide receiver and our running back in the fold, but it feels like we're just relatively healthy.
it
And
does.
I think this league is a war of attrition. And sure, Washington's got off to a great start, and Dallas is Dallas, and Philly, who knows? But you know, Bill Simmons on his podcast, what he does is they write off teams after like week 1 and week 2, and they wrote us off immediately, which understandably. But now they're actually having a conversation about should we unwrite the Giants off just because of how the division is and things. That's not an endorsement that we're good or anything, but this might be a fluky division, and let me see Washington be this good for another 12 weeks before I crown them.
Mhm.
Let's see, does Philly end up whacking their coach? Let's see with Dallas. I mean, that game ended at like 5 o'clock in the morning last night, and let's see if they really are anything.
Yeah, I'm,
So
I'm actually pissed I didn't stay up for that.
I tried, man. It was a long weekend, and when that lightning delay and everything, I just see the problem is Grump. When I make the transition from the living room to the bedroom to watch,
Oh, I know.
old man Cranky just is out like a light, and I can't do that. So
I have
when
never seen anyone live up to the out like a light like stereotype like you have, where like there was one time in the hotel room in Buffalo last year. Yeah,
it was
last
last
year.
year's game, yeah.
Dude, I swear you were mid sentence and then you were out.
Oh yeah, I have a superhuman skill. Like some people can run a 4 minute mile. Some people can do these. Mine is sleep at a moment's notice, anywhere, anytime, any conditions. And it's not easy being me. And being able to sleep is a big thing. So yes, I missed the end of that game last night. But my point being with this amazing sidebar, which no one cares about, is that you know this division may be kind of coming down to our level. That we may have meaningful games if we get to November 1st.
Well, let
I
me
mean,
ask
forget
you a
December.
question. Yeah,
Mhm.
you say coming down to our level. Uh, Based on the offensive performance that you saw yesterday, considering that there was no number one wide receiver out there. A guy who, for argument's sake, let's say he's in the Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson category.
Mm-hmm.
CeeDee Lamb, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
What more do you think you want out of an offense?
I need more bigger plays. We can't have these super long drives just to score. I mean, we have to be able to. And I know we had a couple.
Hang on. You're going to go off on a whole thing. That's fine. I agree with you. Not necessarily. But what's preventing that? Is it just the big arm?
I think it's the big arm right now, and I think it's. I think the pass blocking is there that maybe, and I also think it might be the coaches just don't have the confidence to try it too. I mean, again, the big play was actually working yesterday. Daniel Jones did hit a couple long passes. How many did we actually try?
I think only 2 or 3.
2 or 3.
I agree with you.
So it may be something where maybe as they see more consistency with Daniel Jones, I mean, they're still trying it, in bits and pieces. They haven't completely shut it down altogether, but this team has to have the ability to score quickly, because when we start playing teams that have really good offenses,
you can't do a 14-play drive that takes up 12 minutes.
Exactly. It's not going to work because they're going to score like that.
Yeah.
And then, we got to be better in the red zone too. When we get down there after these long drives, we have to score.
If you're going to be that team that does the 14-play drive thing, it's got to end in 7 every single time. You got to finish. Because that's the only strength to a 14-play drive team. If you can do that, where you dominate the time of possession, you put so much pressure on that opposing offense to need to score quickly. Of course, you play Patrick Mahomes or you play Josh Allen, that may not be a problem. But for most quarterbacks, when they go down 14-0 and they've only had 2 times to touch the ball, and there's now only 4 minutes left in the second quarter because you've held the ball, that pressure is enormous. And it allows so much ease on your defense to freeform things and just, go after the quarterback. It makes them make mistakes. I think that's been the biggest bugaboo to the maybe not. But that is a huge problem. The red zone is a huge problem. I think that Dallas game goes a completely different direction if there's a whiff of a red zone offense, and if they're a methodical 14-play drive kind of offense. I think that Dallas game is an easy win.
Well, even the Washington game.
Game.
A couple of times when we went for it on 4th down, okay, we would have kicked fine, but if not, it's 4th and 1. 4th and 1 to me is a goal line defense, a goal line,
you should get
red zone type of offense. You got to convert on that. It's no difference to me extending a drive versus scoring in those situations.
So I don't disagree with you that I think that. But other than the explosive play being more consistent part of the offense, is there anything more you could ask for from what you've seen? Nothing, right?
No.
It's a small sample size, admittedly, but
yeah.
But so maybe the division isn't dragging itself down to us. Is it possible that we're also climbing? Too optimistic? I mean,
too optimistic.
I honestly think that the offensive line upgrades, including the coach, has been the biggest difference in, the slight, all the little things become big things when you have an offensive line that can just play like that.
Well, let's compartmentalize this season so far to the first 5 games in this division.
Right.
We're at week 5. The biggest improvement to this division has been obviously Daniels.
Right.
Quarterback at Washington. You could make a claim the second biggest thing is our offensive line.
Sure. Oh, okay. Yeah, sure.
Nabers too, but Nabers isn't Nabers necessarily if we can't get the ball to Nabers.
Absolutely.
So I'm actually saying that it's our offensive line, because from where it was before, where we couldn't run a lick, Daniel Jones was dying out there. Quarterback, backup quarterback A, quarterback, backup quarterback B was getting murdered out there. That is, say what you want after 5 weeks, but we're 2-3. But the Washington game, if we have a kicker, we could have won. The Dallas game, it was in fighting distance to winning. The Minnesota game, okay, we lost to Minnesota game. We lost to looks like a really, really good team. It's kind of like, no, I'm not going to use that analogy. It's inappropriate. But that's a team that's building and building and getting better and everything. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know if I think anything yet. Let me rephrase that. I'm not sure if I'm thinking anything. I have my fingers crossed that I am watching all of the things I want to see out of this season happen week by week incrementally.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hoping is what I'm witnessing in front of me. Because if that's the case, there is. I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent because we're wrapping up here. But
Go ahead.
there is a theory around that is backed up by numbers that Joe Shane is the biggest draft for need GM out there. And I think that that's a little bit silly. I think it's a little bit silly because when you come into the situation that he came into, with including the cap handicap that he had, the cap handcuffs that he had, when he walked into, you had to have a two-pronged attack with free agency and the draft to hit just your needs.
Right.
And admittedly, he and or Brian Dable made a calculated failure in 22 to 2023 in thinking that they could just fill holes and reload and go, and that they hadn't in fact solved any problems. I think that it's absolutely true that Joe Shane has been a draft for need GM, but I think that's somewhat circumstantial, and I would like to see him be a draft. I would like to see him draft freely without restrictions. And if this offense is in fact getting better incrementally week by week, I am hopeful that I get to see Joe Shane be Joe Shane and not have to wheel and deal to fix every hole in the boat. You know what I'm saying? It does feel like he was a guy who, if you've got glue for free agency and masking tape for the draft, he walked into a boat with 17 holes. You're going to use both to try and fix that. And, you know, hopefully now there's only 1 or 2 holes left in the boat that you can use the glue for most of it and start using the tape for, I don't know.
Yeah.
Fixing it as you see fit and not just stopping the water from getting in.
For sure.
My wacky analogy as I made up as I was going along there.
Sorry, I was sniffing glue listening to the end of that. So you know, I don't know. I mean, you know, Malik Nabers was wide receiver 1 was a position of need, but also he was the best available player.
I think that's the other silly thing about it too, is just like sometimes need marries with best player available or an arguable best player available. You know what I mean?
I mean,
like
let's say
at some point that's redundant.
Yeah, so let's say for some reason, the Giants lose their next 11 games of the first pick in the draft, and they draft a quarterback. Well, that's a position of need, right? I mean, it's kind of circumstance too. So drafting for need sounds like a bad thing. Also,
here's the other thing.
Is it really a bad thing? I mean, if you need players,
the Giants team that he inherited had needs everywhere. At a certain point, you know what I mean? You're just drafting. It's going to be a need because everything's a fucking need. You draft a linebacker, it might not be need 1, but it's still technically a need. So it's drafting for need, I guess. You know what I mean? Like he walked into a roster that had like 20 holes to fill. So everything was going to be a need.
Yeah, they either had a dire need for somebody, or the guy they just have now is just.
It's not like he took over San Francisco and then he's just suddenly drafting for need on every single need that all 3 needs that San Francisco has.
I mean, talk about San Francisco. John Lynch is now like, the greatest GM. Also, he didn't all of a sudden in 1 year wave his magic wand, and all of a sudden they were a Super Bowl team.
He also might have pulled off one of the worst quarterback draft moves ever.
He drafted Trey Lance.
He traded up for Trey Lance.
Yeah.
So I mean, like sometimes,
and circumstances works out. It's you get lucky.
We need bigger sample sizes. I think sometimes there are a lot of circumstances that get overlooked. I think
GMs should get and deserve to be allowed to have a longer runway than a coach. I think a coach. You can kind of tell quicker in a coach.
Yeah,
is this the right philosophy of how he wants to run his team? Does he Does he marry the players he has with what he wants to do?
I think we knew pretty quickly that Ben McAdoo was not head coach material.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he was an offensive wizard, whatever. That season went badly in his second year, and I mean, you could tell he doesn't have the chops to be the head coach.
And I'd say
End
the
of
same thing
story.
about Joe Judge also. I don't think Joe Judge, Joe Judge had it, gained his chops enough to have the
Yeah,
chops to be the
I
guy.
feel like on a certain level, he just wasn't there yet. I think that he's got some natural ability to be a head coach and CEO, but I think that college might be more his game.
That's fine.
You know,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
not that that's easier, but it's I don't even know if it's less pressure. I guess it's
Depends on
less
where
pressure.
you're at.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're coaching Vanderbilt, there may not be as much pressure as they're coaching Alabama. I bet you Alabama has more pressure than
Ohio State.
several NFL teams have.
Ohio State can lose one game, and if it's to Penn State or Michigan,
Or is the Michigan? Sure.
yeah.
Coaches have been fired because I'm the Auburn coach. I can't beat Bama.
Mm-hmm.
It's happened.
So yeah, but I mean, I think Joe Judge has the innate ability, but hadn't quite earned his stripes,
Mm-hmm. And that's fair.
and I think we knew that pretty quickly.
I think there's a lot of coaches out there. If you go back in recent history in college and the pros, you could say the same thing about all of them. But guys,
Sure,
there's just wasn't his time. He just you could say the same thing about Bill Belichick.
sure.
Just wasn't ready. It just wasn't quite. You could be a defensive coordinator, you could be an offensive coordinator, you could be whatever. And if you're not ready, you're not ready.
I got nothing further on this game. It was a good game, and I'm excited for the next one.
Yeah. I said this to all my friends on Saturday night about the Gators. I'll say the same thing to everybody out there who's a Giant fan. Give yourself always a 24-hour moratorium after a win where you don't look at big picture, you don't bitch, especially teams like these that are not very good and don't have projected to have a lot of wins. Because if that's the case, you're just never going to enjoy watching football and being a Giant fan. Nothing has changed about the future. The future is the future, and the future will get there. But you can't walk after watching that game and just be for 24 hours smiles and happy that we won a football game against a pretty decent team on the road. And that's what I can leave to all of you is just, I wasn't thinking walking out of the bar about what am I going to talk about on the podcast or, we still have to address this and this and that. It was just like, I'm a Giant fan. We won a game. I am happy. So keep that in perspective. And the other thing I want to say in perspective really quick too is that I know a lot of people who listen to this are friends of mine and family members in Tampa Bay. And, you all know I'm from there and it's about to be a catastrophic situation down there. So think of everybody who's down there. I know my parents, they've evacuated. A lot of my friends have evacuated. Think about, when as soon as the storm happens, donate if you can donate money or food or clothing or because it's going to be. If you remember Hurricane Andrew, which flattened South Florida, or Katrina, this might be rivaling as bad as that. So just keep those people in your thoughts, as we go through this week and everything, because it's going to impact me and friends and family of mine too. So just a little thought. We'll put a link in about where you can donate as the week goes on.
Absolutely. I hope that the Giants can bring that hurricane energy to Sunday night against the Cincinnati Bengals. We will have our preview show for that on Friday morning on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And of course you can follow us on Twitter at @football_grump and at the Cranky Fan and at Just Giants Pod. So we will see you all Friday morning previewing our next Giants victory. Until then, go Giants.
Go Giants.